My name is Carmen Rodriguez. I'm a Chilean-Canadian writer, educator, and journalist. And I've lived in Canada for 52 years with a 5-year interval in Bolivia and Argentina, where I joined the underground resistance movement to the Pinochet dictatorship. But I've lived here more than half of my life, much more than I lived in my native Chile. I'm a lot more involved in activities that have to do with culture and writing through an organization that we formed. It's going to be 13 years now, or 14 ago, called the Vancouver Latin American Cultural Center. And the final purpose of this organization is to found a physical place that we can call home in terms of Latin American culture here in Vancouver. I don't know how much longer it's going to take to do that, because we all know the real estate situation in Canada and particularly in Vancouver, and we're not a wealthy community. So we're working really hard towards that. And in the meantime, during these 13, 14 years, we have developed a very broad base of people who are interested in a deeper understanding of Latin American culture. And we have presented literally hundreds of workshops, events, musical, arts, theater, that have attracted, as I said, a wide audience. So I'm very much involved with VLAC, is what we call it for the for Vancouver Latin American Cultural Center. And a few years ago, I think it was 2021, I was inducted as the organization's first honorary elder. So, one, because I'm old, and two, because having been one of the first people to come to Canada as an artist, as a writer, and to Vancouver particularly, I'm the keeper of the memory of our community's cultural and artistic and political activities here in Vancouver. Exile, I think, means that you have had to leave your country suddenly, because you're fearing for your life, because you're being persecuted for your beliefs, in this case, my political beliefs, and then you're uprooted from the place that you have called home your whole life, and you're separated as well from family, from your parents, from your brothers, in my case, and also you are hurting because you have also been deprived of your freedoms and of your dreams. In the case of Chile, the coup meant the end of a whole era for a generation, for my generation, who dreamed of a better society for all. You know, I come from that large group of Latin Americans that fought very hard to install a system that would be equitable, that would be just, that would not be at the mercy of multinational corporations or the U.S. government, and that dream came true in part by having elected a socialist in 1970, Salvador Allende, who was a self-declared Marxist, but who was elected by popular vote. And he put into place reforms that were basic to achieve the kind of society that we wanted, like the nationalization of the copper mines, the main resource in Chile, like universal health care and free education for all. He implemented an agrarian reform law that had already been passed by the previous government but had not been fully implemented. And against all odds, he advanced with his program, with always confronting the opposition of the national bourgeoisie and oligarchy and landowners and so on. And finally, because of the intervention of the US and the CIA provided millions of dollars to opponents of Allende. And finally, the whole chaotic situation created by the CIA and the national opponents to Allende urged and pushed the alliance that they made with the military, which carried out the dirty work of deposing Allende. Allende died, was killed, because the presidential palace was bombed, and with US planes and bombs. And persecution began right away, even before Allende had been killed. That very morning, earlier than that, many people were shot to death, incarcerated. And a few months of intense terror began, followed by a 17-year dictatorship that continued with that the authoritarian regime. So being an exile means, in my case, to have been uprooted from my country of origin, to have been separated from my family and friends, to be mourning the death and disappearance of many friends, and also to have seen my dreams of a better world for everyone aborted. So it's a painful situation. We Chileans believed when we first got here that the dictatorship was going to be short-lived. It was not. So for quite a while, we lived with our suitcases readily made to go back to Chile. And it took a while for us to realize that's not going to happen. And we'd better start living life here. And that was, again, a painful realization, which in many ways shaped us as people that for a long time, I'm talking for myself, felt very much like I was living in limbo. I wasn't truly, totally here. My eyes were always looking south. My heart was kind of in between. It started to move north with time. I started to love this country as well. And finally, when I realized that going back was not a choice that I could make, in parentheses, I was blacklisted, so I couldn't go back to Chile until 1987. So there were 14 years there that I couldn't go back anyway, even if I had wanted to. And then, my kids grew up here. By the time the dictatorship was deposed, they were teenagers. They had a life here. I had another son who was small and whose father was here. So the doors to go back really closed, or I closed them voluntarily, and life continued. And now, 52 years later, I don't hurt anymore. Sometimes a little bit, particularly when I go to Chile and then have to come back, and I wish I were there for a little longer, or And then I read or see that there are all these kinds of wonderful events, cultural events going on in Chile. Oh, I wish I were there. But life is here, and there's a lot to do here. And my kids are here, my grandkids are here, and I'm happy. After all these experiences, and as I was saying, because the Chilean situation changed, but not in the way that I had dreamed that it would change, I turned to my writing. And in 1992, my first book was published. It was a book of poetry, which was translated to English by Heidi Neufeld-Rain, who was then a student at the creative writing uh, school at UBC, at the University of British Columbia. And she translated it with me. So that was the first book. Then I also started working and refining and rewriting and editing and writing new ones on a collection of short stories. And by then I joined a group of women writers, all of different ancestries, but all writing in English. And we used to meet once a month to workshop our writing. And I was always pressed to find somebody who would translate my stories before the meeting. And I had many friends who were great translators, and they did the favor. But I was never too happy with the translations. Not that they were bad translations, they were good translations, but there was always something missing. So I told that to my friends in the group, and they said, "Why do you need a translator? Why don't you do it yourself?" And I thought, oh no, I can't do that. English is not my first language. I always hesitate because I don't know if it's in or on or at or this or that. And they said, oh, that's nothing. We'll help you with that. Start doing it yourself. So around 94, 95, I started, I had my first attempts at translating my work into English. But what happened was a very interesting process, I find, by which I would start translating, and then a word or a turn of phrase in English would trigger something different in my head, in my brain, and I would go on. I would continue the story in English. Oh, okay. And then I realized, I'll have to transpose that back to Spanish now. So the same thing would happen over and over again. So I came to call that method my teeter-totter methodology, which is basically characterized by that, by coming and going between the two languages. And of course, it's a lot of work. But at the end of every process, I have two products, one in English and one in Spanish. They're both authored by myself. And they're not really translations of each other, even though they are mirror translations. They are creations. So that's how the bilingual writing began. And it's become the way that I always write in. And I think that this is very revealing of who I am, because I am bicultural, bilingual. I have dual geographies. I have dual worldviews. So the bilingual writing reflects that, and the hyphenated Chilean-Canadian also reflects, that bridge. That hyphen is kind of the bridge between the Chilean and the Canadian Carmen Rodriguez. One of the challenges that we Latin Americans encounter here as cultural workers is the stereotyping that the mainstream society imposes on us. Now, we're supposed to be hot-blooded and very cheerful and whatever, right? And we are also stereotyped physically, because if you're a Latina, you're supposed to be dark-skinned and so on and so forth. Well, we have all kinds of backgrounds, and we're not necessarily like that. So breaking stereotypes is one of the challenges that we continue to face. And in part, our work at the Vancouver Latin American Cultural Center is directed towards breaking those stereotypes and offer a deeper understanding of Latin American arts and cultures. We want to go beyond the veneer, beyond the expected with our work. So I think that still that's one of the the challenges that is very in our face. But with that comes the opportunity of presenting our work seriously, professionally, of expanding people's minds and views of what it is to be Latin American, of what it is to be a cultural worker or an artist from that part of the world. And at the same time, we've had the opportunity to exchange views and to exchange practices with people, with other immigrants and with other cultures, which is something that we would have never had in our home countries. I stopped being an activist in terms of on the ground, hands-on activism against the dictatorship and so on. Writing became my activism. I see writing as my activism and my way of telling the world what happened in Chile, what's happening in Canada, our lives as exiles in Canada. And so for me, writing has become my activist project because it allows me to tell the truth, to denounce, to keep memory alive, and to also in some way turn horror into beauty, into art. So this is my main focus now, writing and publishing. I never thought that I would be published, but my desire to publish and to publicize what I publish is not to find fame or glory for myself. It's because I think my books tell stories and ideas, propose ideas and dreams that are important. In that sense, I'm not shy about promoting what I write, because I think people need to read it, and besides, they will have a good time reading it. My latest work is a novel. that was published, that I wrote in that methodology, using the teeter-totter methodology, and which I finished around 2020, maybe 2019. And that was published in 2021 here in Canada by Fernwood Publishing. It's a novel called Atacama, like the desert in the north of Chile. It took me years to find somebody that would want to publish it in Spanish, and finally that happened this year, and it came out in Santiago by Real Editores in Spanish. So this book, unlike the other ones, the previous ones, which have mainly to do with the coup and the exile and all of that, those are my novel Retribution and my short stories and The Body to Remember With. This latest one, Atacama, goes back to 1925 in Chile. Right now I'm working on a book of poetry. I haven't published poetry since 1992, other than journals and stuff like that. But this book of poetry is called Lar. Lar in Spanish is a word that means place, hearth, home. And Lar will be bilingual. In this case, now I'm writing both languages, and I'm immersed in that right now. So my message to everyone, and exiles in particular, life didn't end when you left your country. It's been painful. It is painful, but there's so much around you in the new place where you live, and there's always work to be done, whichever way you choose to do it. If you're a teacher, if you're a doctor, if you're a janitor, if you're whoever you are and whatever you do, there is life. Life goes on, and it's our duty to live life as joyously as we can, because that's a form of resistance. You know, the powers that be would love to see us beaten up and pessimistic and sad and angry. Anger is wonderful. I think anger propels a lot of stuff. So we do have a right to be angry. We do have a right to be sad. But most of all, we have the duty to be happy. Happiness is resistance.